Hello everyone, this is Kriti extending a warm welcome to all of you. I'm a marketing executive at Upside Learning and your host for the webinar today. Thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar, 3 things to focus on for creating engaging multi-device e-learning. Before we get started, I would like to let you know that you will be receiving the recording of this webinar later through email. Feel free to ask any questions anytime using the chat facility. Now, for a quick introduction about Upside Learning. For almost 12 years now, we have been helping organizations of different sizes and types to improve performance through better learning. With our head office in India, we serve clients based in the UK, the US, Australia, Middle East, North Africa, Singapore, New Zealand, Thailand, and other countries. Our learning solutions include custom e-learning services and Upside LMS, our best value SaaS learning management system. The tailor-made custom e-learning services range from responsive e-learning development to rapid e-learning, on-site ID resources to multi-device testing, Flash to HTML conversion to translation and localization, and more. We have been recognized and awarded time and again by renowned bodies like Learning Technologies, Brandon Hall, Training Industry, etc. These are some of our clients. Moving on to the webinar, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the speaker, Amit Garg, Director and Co-founder, Upside Learning. Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Kriti. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you're joining us today. Thank you very much for joining for this session on creating engaging e-learning for multi-device world. Upfront, I want to put this question to you. That is, why is e-learning sometimes not so engaging? And if you do wish to share your comments, please use the chat window. Just to gather what you have been thinking about this. I'm sure you've been involved with the e-learning if you are attending this session, and you've experienced good and bad e-learning, both from a learner and a designer perspective. Hopefully, you've seen all. So just to gather your thoughts, if you are willing to share anything, just maybe you can raise your hand or put in a quick comment in the chat box, so we know that you're typing in something, and we'll wait for a minute. Okay, I'm still there. I'm just looking for any comments. Okay, so there's one from Anne, and the comment is, no challenge to think, page turner. Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the fundamental mistakes that e-learning creators have made time and again, is to present digital books online, and that may not be the most appropriate. Right, so we have possibly covered this in some of the things that we're talking about today. Another few seconds to see if anyone else is really sharing any thoughts, else we'll move on. There's another one, again from N, this one from a different N, and it takes too much time from SME to develop engaging e-learning. Wow. Excuse me. Yeah, I think an often uncovered aspect that engaging e-learning would require an SME to possibly iterate a few times with the development team. Absolutely brilliant, spot on, and this really doesn't get covered in various discussions. We haven't have this in our presentation either today. But yeah, looking back at some of the recent projects that we have done, sometimes that could be a challenge. Absolutely agree with that. All right, so let's get started with what we have in store for you today. Before we get into the actual meat of the session, let me just share with you a few things about the multi-device world itself. Of course, there's no doubt that we are living in a multi-device world. For the various sessions that we keep doing, and whenever we have asked people or participants in our sessions how many devices they are using, we typically get an average of about 3 devices or slightly less than that in the last 12 months. So that shows that we are now getting used to multi-devices, multiple devices in our lives. And this is also a world which is still evolving. So watches are still about to happen, especially to the learning domain, and glass in some form will also be available. Maybe even VR would be a possibility. So just to start with that perspective, that it is a evolving domain in terms of what all will come into the play, and the best thing to deal with such a domain is to step in, start doing something about it, and can't wait for it to stabilize. So that's the starting point. There are 2 key points I want to make about the multi-device world itself. One is about types of multi-device experiences. This has been borrowed from Nika Levin's book on designing multi-device experiences. She talks of 3 types of multi-device experiences. The first one is consistent, which is, in our view, the default experience that you have from most sites that you visit. So maybe a Netflix, a Google, or most other sites. You will find excuse me, a very consistent experience across devices when you visit them. And this is something that you may not have ever thought of as if it's a experience that can be called something specific, but consistent is what we call them. The next one is continuous, where your experience is shifting from one device to another while you're doing a certain task or doing 2 specific tasks which are linked to each other. A very good example is Amazon Kindle. Through its Whisper Sync technology, you can leave a book at any particular point and pick it up and start reading it from the same point on a different device as well. And they've actually taken it forward with the audio as well, plugged in, so you can actually start listening to a book and stop it where you want and then start reading that. So you could be on a run, on out for a jog in the morning while you're listening to it, and then on a train while you're reading it just where you left it in the morning. In terms of another good example which you may have sometimes experienced might be looking up for maybe let's say flight tickets on your mobile phone, and then continuing with that same website when you go onto your tablet or desktop to make the actual booking and do the payments, etc. So that's again a continuous experience. In e-learning domain, a continuous experience across multiple devices would simply be at the very simplest be bookmarking. So if you have a responsive e-learning program which has bookmarking, and you can view the same program on multiple devices, you can possibly leave it on one place and then exactly begin at the same place on a different device. But then continuous could actually be a little more than just that. Like the ticket booking example, you can have more things to do in consistent experience. In a complementary experience, which is the third form, you're actually trying to combine more than 2 devices or 2 or more devices to create a unique new experience which wasn't possible through any of those devices on their own. So here's a good example. This is called DARTBOARD. It comes with 2 different apps, one for the iPhone and one for iPad. You can pair them up, and then with the flick of your phone in your hand, the swing, it can sense that there's a dart being thrown out from your phone towards the dartboard on your iPad. And that's a great example of how you could pair devices to create a complementary or a unique new experience. Again, all of these three experiences are really types of experiences that we can create with multiple devices. If you're new to multi-device world, like most organizations are at this stage, probably consistent is the best way to start with. Look for something which can be done on a continuous basis and then look at complementary. We don't know what devices will come into that mix when we get to their complementary experience creation. The second big thing about the multi-device world itself, which is worth pointing out, is really context is the king now. Especially if you have mobile devices in the mix, chances are that people are accessing those learning interventions on the go, just in time, using it more as performance support than anything else. So in all of those situations, really accessibility trumps design, and design we mean is a visual design, which has really been the main focus area for a long time, especially when we've been doing flash-based, flashy e-learning really. So that is the design that we really believe that would be less important compared to accessibility, especially when we are going towards multi-device learning solutions. I have a couple of examples that I've pulled out. This is a well-documented example, which is text for baby, which is for expecting mothers or mothers who just delivered baby. So, I think for 3 to 6 month period, they can get timely reminders and help and information based on the dates that they have fed into the system, and all through SMS. So, that's one great thing about this. It is so accessible that anybody on any kind of phone anywhere in the world can possibly get it. So it just shows how important that aspect becomes when you're reaching out to people on mobile devices. Another example towards, more towards the corporate world, Telenor has used SMS-based multiple choice questions and embedded other media elements in SMS-based programs that they have created for their staff. And this is from one of their presentations on SlideShare. So just to underline that point, that accessibility might just be more important than design, and design we mean the visual side of it in multi-device learning solutions. So with that, those two key points, let's move on to just look at what some research has been saying about engagement with online learning. And this we have picked up from the New Learning Agenda, which is a November 2013 report by Towards Maturity in the UK. And they found that 44% of learners don't wish to engage with online learning. It may come as a surprise to some, it may not. But when they were asked why, they listed 3 top reasons as uninspiring content being the topmost reason, lack of somewhere appropriate to study, that's possibly surprising to a lot of us, and can't find what they need. So, and of course there are more reasons which are slightly lesser quoted than these in terms of percentages, but as L&D people, we obviously need to look at each one of those. For today's session, we'll focus only on the first one, the top one, which is uninspiring content. So we know that this is one of the primary reasons why your staff doesn't want to engage with online learning. Let's see what we can do as learning professionals. So again, if we can take a pause and just see if you have any thoughts which you would like to share, that will be wonderful before I put in share my thoughts, which is about 3 specific things that we can really do. And I'll wait for a minute or so while you're typing. All right, so here we have our first one. And suggests that make learning more pertinent to the task at hand so that it is always relevant, perhaps more performance support than knowledge only. Fantastic suggestion, and I think it works very well with adult learners who are always looking for a reason to do something, and what better than helping them do something or complete a task or perform better. But yeah, the long link between training and an ability to really show that you have learned something, if an opportunity arises 6 or even 12 months, is really not exciting enough. If it is performance support, the is immediate and apparent. All right, thanks, Anne. We'll move ahead and see that what we are talking of today. We have three main areas in which we are talking of, which is the purpose, motivation, and interactivity. And let's see what we can do in each of these. Purpose of your course. Now, when I talk about this, I'm really talking of the corporate world where you're doing training for your staff. And in my view, you won't really do any training if there's no business objective linked with that. And business objective would typically boil down to some sort of an action or behavior change for your staff. So unless behavior change is the purpose of your program, very likely that program is not going to result in much business benefit, leave alone any engagement at the learner's level. We are, kind of very big fans of action mapping by Cathy Moore, specifically for this area, because it just helps everybody do a good job of finding out how to go about mapping their programs against business objectives and exactly what the learners need to do. So this is how it happens, and you can obviously go and look at her blog, and she has more examples there. This particular example is from her website. So let's say you have a measurable goal of increasing widget sales by about 10% in the next year. What you need to identify is what kind of job behaviors that your staff needs to exhibit, which will help you reach that goal. So there could be multiple behaviors that you are aware of or you have identified. For each of those behaviors, what are those realistic practice activities that your staff can go through and learn to demonstrate that behavior in a comparatively risk-free environment? And again, there would be multiple activities for different behaviors. And for each of those activities, what is the kind of essential information that you want to give to your staff? And it's very crucial to note that essential information is what we're talking of. And again, that will be for each of those activities. You don't want to overload, and that's where the purposefulness will come in. But to me, all of these information chunks and the activities would really form your e-learning program. If the activities can be done in a digital mode, they will all be in the e-learning program. If they can't be done in digital mode and they can be done only in physical environment, offline, then you have a blended program where the information is probably being delivered in a e-learning program while practice or activities are being done in an offline mode. But to me, as a structure, as a model, this is a fantastic place to start any program where you are able to link what information you want to give to your staff, which they will apply and use to demonstrate some kind of job behaviors which will ultimately lead to a business objective. So this kind of captures what we really want to do on each program. And if you are able to do this, I think you've taken a huge step in creating something which is going to be engaging for your staff, because they can almost instinctively see a program which is going to fit into what they want to do and what the organization wants to do. The second point, which is about motivation. is really that motivation is absolutely crucial, and there is no argument about that. Without motivation, we would not have any learning happening. Now, here's a great quote from Ethan Edwards at LN Interactions, which is, e-learning is an isolated activity, so motivation is crucial and it has to come from within the learner or from instructional design. I think it would be only fair to say that if it was to come from the learner, they would have already learned a lot of things by searching on the web, going to YouTube, if it is generic information. If it is proprietary information to an organization, they could possibly go to intranet or talk to other people, etc. But more often than not, they would be able to find what they're looking for if they were motivated enough or they really knew what they were looking for. So in this case, it is probably safe to assume that we as learning professionals need to bring that instructional design which has motivation included in that in our programs. How to go about including that in our programs? We've listed a few things that can be done which takes care of the motivation aspect in your programs. The first one is really what's in it for me. A very simple thing, often missed. We as adults, we would really not do anything unless we understand this particular thing first. So we, again, it's almost like instinctive to us. We really start thinking about it almost immediately. So for e-learning programs, maybe this won't happen in the program. It might just happen before the program in your program rollouts, in any way that you advertise and send information out about the programs, maybe through posters, maybe through emailers, whatever it is. But the what's in it for me has to be almost upfront so that people can get excited about the program and know why they would want to do that program. I have a example from my personal life here. This is a video that I reached a few months ago. It is about a small ailment that you have on your elbow. It's called olecranon brucitis. It looks like a Popeye elbow, and that's a that's a nickname that it has. But I had this small thing a few months ago while playing tennis. There was an inflammation. I searched the web. I read a few articles, saw a few videos, finally found this video which had absolutely matching details about what could be the symptoms, what could be the reason, how you could possibly take care of that, and when to go to a doctor. So I just lied low for a couple of weeks and it kind of sorted out by itself. And it's a good example about when there is this what's in it for me sorted out, there is enough motivation created to go and do things. Of course, this particular thing may not happen in an organizational context, but the example is kind of a good one. And I'm sure you've done a lot of it by going to YouTube and various other places to find how to do certain things. And that's where that what's in it really scores. So if we can address that, I think we are able to pull in learners into the programs. And if we are able to pull in learners, they are mentally better prepared to engage with the course. We also want to make it purposeful and conversational because it is absolutely important to respect your learners. They are not in an academic institution. They are adults. They are working professionals. They are probably busy throughout the day. They have other things to do. It's not fair if we give them a program which is really long drawn and losing focus, and we're talking to them as if they are kids, all of that. So we just need to make sure that we're able to do that. Here's a quick example of one of the programs we've done recently where the introduction part of the program is just in that white left, top left corner. Suggested navigation is at the top, but then the navigation is really open and you can go and just click any of those and get started. So essentially almost a 1 minute intro and setup, and you get into the core of the program immediately. And that is very purposeful to your learners. They would really like that, they are actually doing the stuff that they wanted to do in the program when they came in, rather than listening to 4 or 5 slides where you are just introducing the course, the objectives, what will they learn, how the course has been structured, what is the help file, where is the glossary, etc., etc. And I think most learners are now mature enough to know most of those things. If they don't, they will find out. Uh, Also, probably in the same vein, and I think N earlier suggested about keeping it bite-sized, small, and even searchable. And searchable came out as one of the top 3 reasons why learners don't want to interact with or engage with online learning. But this is even more important when we're talking of mobile devices. So, again, coming back to that same point on context in which they will be accessing that e-learning, that maybe it is used as performance support or just-in-time learning. So it is better to keep it smaller when we are creating it for multi-device. Here's an example of about 2-minute video nuggets on product training for this company called Vocalect, where they had many products. They are into voice-enabled warehousing solutions, and their shop floor people on the warehouse, they carry iPads, and it's easier for them to really learn about each and every product quickly. If they are looking for something, they can go to the LMS, search for that particular nugget, launch it, and do it in 2 minutes. So as you can see, there's no real navigation on this slide. You just have 1, 2, 3. So there are essentially 3 1-minute videos in that nugget. Another thing which really kills motivation excuse me, for adult learners is locked navigation or forced navigation. So if it is entirely linear, they're not always very happy, but I'm not saying all linear programs would be bad, but if you can create enough engagement within the slides and enough reason for them to stick onto those slides, excellent. But it is slightly difficult. So leaving it non-linear and of course open and definitely not logged. So there are courses where you'll have until you click all the 10 clickables on the screen, the next button will not activate. Now those kind of things really forces them to just click rather than read. So it's actually counterproductive. So we would really think that, if you open up the navigation, your learners are happier, they are more in control and charge. You can always test them through the assessment rather than really lock it at every stage. Again, a good example here where the introduction, this is the whole introduction and setup page where you have a quick 1-minute introduction, and then you're free to choose whichever scenario you want to get in and just click that and go. And the last one in terms of motivation would be to build it for multi-device consciously. So it should not be an afterthought that, oh, we have a program which is for desktop, let's also deliver it on a mobile device. It will actually kill motivation almost instantly, because desktop-based programs ported to mobile devices in any case will be very difficult, lengthy, may not have been thought through from a structural design and layout perspective. So it has to really be done mobile first if you're really looking at multi-device, and it should look maybe something like this, where it is easier, flows into all the devices, doesn't really look it has been created for desktop but force fit for smaller devices. Another one, as you can see, the design is actually coming from the mobile device and then just kind of growing in the area that it occupies and adding some non-essentials to fill up the screen. So that could be really the way to go when you're building for mobile or multi-device. All right, so the the last part, which is the third element, which is on interactivity. Again, if you have any thoughts, we'd really love if you could share on this. How do you measure interactivity? Now this is a big one because there's a lot of confusion around interactivity, and we try and clarify that today. But in your thoughts, how do you measure interactivity if you really do that? And if you have a question on that, I can clarify what I'm trying to seek a response on. So like earlier, we'll wait for a minute to see if anybody has a thought on this. Okay, Paul is suggesting that XAPI is good for true measuring of things. Yeah, I think it does measure all the things that a learner is doing, because of course the statements are Paul attended a webinar, something like that. So it records all of those. So, but that's also, unless you make it granular at very specific action level, it may just be a very broad statement like this one. So it could be that it doesn't capture that you answered a question or you shared your thoughts. It might just say that you attended a webinar. So it depends on how you are capturing it. But my question about interactivity is more towards more for the way we have been thinking of interactivity in e-learning programs. And let me just add to that. Uh, when we go out and talk to our clients, typically they would want cost for a level 1, level 2, level 3 program, and that may not be very different in your organizations. And our understanding is more often than not, a level 1 would be lower on interactivity, level 2 would have more interactivity, and level 3 would be maybe towards a simulation or a game kind of thing. So there is some element of correlation, but it is not absolute, which is what I think we need to get clarity on. Everybody should be understanding, and we'll delve into that a bit as we go. N says easier to test knowledge than interactivity within a course. Almost need to measure performance outside of the course. True. I mean, quite frankly, a course would be able to help you measure at best or at the level 2 of Kirkpatrick. Level 3 has to be, on the job. It cannot be in the course. So, yeah, you're right. Level 1 and 2 is what you can at best measure within a program. Okay, so this is really what we are trying to say when we're talking of interactivity. Interactivity is not engagement, as in they're not really interchangeable. If it is interactive, it is going to be engaging, right? Unless it is meaningful interactivity, it is probably not very exciting for your learners. They are mature enough to recognize that who wants to be a millionaire kind of a game wrapper with questions thrown in doesn't really qualify for a very high level of interactivity. So, and there are tools around which really claim that, you can build interactivities quite quickly, etc., etc. Good if you use them well enough, but I think sometimes you end up misusing some of those. And so I'll give you an example which might just drive this point home. This is an example of something which is absolutely non-interactive, but possibly very engaging. I think for people who have read this, they would vouch for that. It is quite engaging, and they would also vouch that there are no clicks and click to reveals and drag and drops in this one. So the point that we're trying to make here is that interactivity has to be with the heads and minds of the learners, not with their hands. And for whatever reason, I think we've for too long focused on interactivity of the hand than of the mind. I think that correlation, once it gets shaken, we would be able to do or focus on the right type of interactivity. So interactivities per se are not bad. Just thinking that any interactivity is good and it is leading to engagement, that notion is really flawed. So how do you go about creating meaningful interactions? And what else can you do? Because sometimes if you think interactions is engagement, you would probably just don't look beyond creating some of those, let's call it pseudo interactions, and think that yes, that is all that you can do. But within interactions, if you have to make them meaningful, ideally we should give some sort of a real scenario or context in which the learners are going to perform and do something which is closer to their real jobs. I think this was also a suggestion that came up earlier in response to one of the questions. And also provide elaborate feedback. Now, all of these three are really, the base on which you can build a good quality simulation or a game, etc. So that would really be good, meaningful interactivity if you are building on these. I would just want to highlight the elaborate feedback part because that's very essential, and we kind of see that we tend to miss that very often. It's a wasted opportunity because learners are really ready to learn when they have possibly committed a mistake or they got something right but they were not sure. But if you can really add to that information what they are currently really being assessed on, or in that interactivity or action, that whatever they have done, if you can add more information or add another example, it just reinforces what they were thinking, even if they got it right. So we should not miss on those opportunities. And of course, if we can give a scenario and let them do something which is closer to their jobs. Now this one is a simple example with I would say a game. It is not really a game, so let's not really even go there. It just has a couple of game elements, which is a timer and a score, which doesn't really make it a game in any case. What is possibly decent in this one is that you have things to interact with here and then make a choice, and then more than that you have other elements that you need to think of. That is are these areas a problem, or the whole chair is a problem? Can I replace it with a completely different chair? And should I replace it with this chair or this chair? And that kind of forces you to think a little more than a normal hotspot activity. So that is really what we we mean by adding more meaning to that interactivity. Here is an interactivity which is more useful in terms of giving feedback. Now here you have for people who want to learn English on their I think this is meant for tablets, where you have a video of someone who's interviewing you, and you need to answer that. You can record your voice and then play it back, and it will give you feedback as to how your response was compared to what should have been the response. So that's immediate feedback and a great situation in which you are actually practicing. So doing that activity and rehearsing. Apart from interactivities, storytelling, just borrowing from the novel that I shared, storytelling could be very exciting if you can use that and build a program around that. We obviously remember more from stories. We are naturally more interested and receptive to stories. We have a quick example where we've used story to actually pull in the learners by narrating a story and then using that story as a baseline, and then putting in information about the products that we're going to teach in this program on that baseline, so it is easier for them to really follow and learn and keep track of. Videos are another great way to bring in engagement, and you can actually have videos which also have interactivity. But videos are, first of all, they're naturally responsive, so they can work on all devices. You can see them on large screens, you can see them on small mobile screens as well. Not much really gets distorted in them unless you have textual material which has been optimized for larger devices, so you can't read it on smaller devices. So unless if you've taken care of that, videos are really naturally responsive, they can work. And interactive videos actually have a great potential. In a way, we feel that we're coming full circle now, because in the pre web-based training era, we had a lot of video in VHS format, and and I'm sure your organization, if it has been around for a couple of decades or slightly more than that, they would definitely have a lot of VHS videos lying around in the training department or somewhere, which were really good, well-made videos, and were really nice. But then when we moved to the web, video became heavy. It was really difficult to send it over the web and access it, etc. And now shooting a video is easy, editing a video is easy, sending it over web is easy, and now we have technology to really access it at the point of need on our mobile devices, and we have technology to make it interactive as well. So I think video is getting a new lease of life with newer age devices and the bandwidths that we have, and we'll see more and more of videos coming into e-learning. So we feel videos could be naturally engaging as well, because they really interact with a lot of our senses together. So like movies, if you can have half well-made videos, it would be more engaging for people than any other form of e-learning format. We have a couple of videos just to highlight what kind of programs can be created with those. I'll just try and play those for you. So this is a video on anti-robbery practices or something like that. I just forget the name of the program, but yes, it is about shoplifting and robbery in shops. And the video can be used as either an introduction or a scenario where the learners can really feel what could possibly happen in a situation like this. And then you can pose questions based on that, ask for their decisions, etc. So it's a good way to really let learners feel they were in the situation. There's another type of video which is more on the how-to kind of video, meant for mobile phones. Let's watch this and then I'll tell you more.
To clean toilets and urinals. Before beginning any sort of cleaning, ensure that you put on the correct personal protective equipment required for the task. Begin by placing safety signs around the work area. Apply the undiluted clean.
So what's interesting in this one is that it is actually being created for this company called Zangro, which has more than 200 different products, and their cleaning staff could possibly be shifting from one location to another using different types of products, or substituting for other cleaners, so getting exposed to newer products on a regular basis. It's difficult to really remember how to use a particular cleaning agent. So what was done here was, we got QR codes printed on each of those different cleaning agent bottles, and through the mobile phone you could scan the QR code and launch the how-to video. So it was logistically brilliant for cleaning staff to learn how to use a particular cleaning agent that they may be facing for the first time or after a very long time. So such how-to videos could be very, very interesting, and it fits in perfectly well with the mobile plus performance support just-in-time kind of scenario. I'll leave you with this last one, which I'm not playing out for you. If you want to note down the URL, if you haven't seen this, by the way, this is a few years old, I think 3 or at least 2 years old. This was one of the winners at eLearning Age Awards. And it's a good example of, interactive video where you have some game elements thrown in terms of points that you're getting, etc. Do take a look at this if you haven't seen this. I'm sure you will like that. So that's it from our side. I'll just recap on the three key things that we are really trying to focus on. Purpose of your program, it has to be behavior change, and Cathy Moore's action mapping is a great tool to use that for that. Motivation is crucial. There's no doubt about it. There are several ways we can do it. What's in it for me, treating our learners with respect, creating it as a professional, quick kind of course, bite-sized, searchable, etc. And the third one, which we believe there's a big myth around for that, is interactivity is definitely not engagement. Some interactivity could lead to engagement, but in our opinion, a lot of it doesn't. So one, let's make it more meaningful, and second, let's look at other options like videos and storytelling, if we can bring in those. So that's really all from our side. We have kind of ended about 15 minutes sooner. Happy to take any questions if you have. So there is one from Renika. One question: at times the content is such that doesn't allow you to include videos, example, compliance training. What to do in such situations? So if you're asking for short videos, I agree. So we've used a lot of animated videos for compliance training, where it is easier to show what can go wrong if you do this, if you do that. I remember specifically videos of hazards on ships, videos on accepting gifts, etc. in a bank. So all of those are in compliance, but they're all animated videos. Difficult for me, Renika, to show any examples right now. If you don't mind, if you could drop me a mail or on my mail ID, I'll definitely connect with you. Thank you. There's another one from Laurie, which is, what is an ideal video length to keep learners engaged? That's very interesting. So I would say, depending on, again, what purpose you're using it for, and if it is for multi-device, first of all. If it is for multi-device, typically we would say anything that you're creating, whether it is video or not, 5 minutes is probably ideal, 10 minutes is a stretch. Anything beyond 10 minutes is an absolute no-no. If you're doing it for desktops and it is a program where you may have, people will be sitting at their desks and doing it, you can stretch it to half an hour. But anything more than half an hour for desktop-based programs is really long. But a video which is running for half an hour, absolutely no. Unless you make it interactive and chunk it and have other things coming in between, it might just become very monotonous. So if you go through the last video that I shared, the lifesaver one, it is fairly long because there are 4 different scenarios, I believe, in that, and each scenario takes about, I think, about between 5 and 10 minutes. So it is ideal to be used on mobile phone as well, by doing just one scenario at a time, and it is okay to be done on desktops as well if you want to do all of them together. All right. If there are no more questions, thank you very much. You all have a good day. Thanks once again for joining us for this webinar. Bye-bye.